My name is Aleksander Wierzejski. Welcome to Poland Daily News. A migration pact has been agreed with the European Parliament by the EU interior ministers. Under the terms of the legislation, Poland will have to pay around 22,000 euros for each person whose entry into the country is refused. The Polish authorities are quick to point out that the new legislation is not yet binding. Ministers from Poland and Hungary opposed the migration package. Bulgaria, Malta, Lithuania and Slovakia abstained. Mateusz Morawiecki, the Prime Minister, has said Poland will not agree to the EU's latest migrant relocation scheme and will not pay for migrants it refuses to take in. As long as there is a government of law and justice, we will not allow the policy of imposing some kind of immigration quota on us, some kind of refugee quota from Africa, the Middle East, Arab, Muslims or whatever. In the light of the solutions adopted, at least 30,000 people would be separated within the Union each year, of whom 2,000 migrants would be sent to Poland. The mechanism of forced relocation has proved to be unworkable, harmful and inadequate to the challenges, and it was already collapsed like a house of cards. Poland is the country that successfully managed the biggest post-war migration crisis, will not accept absurd ideas imposed. Failure to take in migrants is to be punished with a fine of 20,000 euros per person. Government politicians are mindful that the Union passed a similar law in 2015, but it has never put into practice. Some issues are in the hands of the member states, such as deciding who a country should accept, and others are in the hands of the European Commission or the European Union, which should not interfere in the issues that are reserved for the states. The Polish government argues it has accepted the most Ukrainian refugees among the all EU member states and complains that hosting them has not been adequately compensated for with EU money. The country's conservative law and justice government has been a staunch opponent of EU migrant relocation schemes. Justice Minister Zbigniew Ziobro is strongly opposed to the Council of the European Union's proposal for a new conclusion on the application of the Charter of Fundamental Rights to the issue of LGBTQ people. This conclusion pushes for privileges and special rights for the LGBT communities without taking into account the demands of Poland, according to Minister Ziobro. This conclusion pushes for privileges and special rights for LGBT people, while ignoring Polish demands to protect the rights of religious people, mainly Christians, in the European Union and to expose the acts of aggression and hatred that are increasingly directed against these communities. This is due to the fact that the document proposed by the Swedish presidency of the Council is extremely one-sided and rejects the demands that would protect other groups that are at risk of aggression. This includes, of course, people of different faiths, but it also includes people with disabilities. These groups deserve more than the European Union to take action so that their members can feel safe in the European Union. I felt it was right to oppose this draft decision. An amendment to Poland's 2023 budget law adopted by the Polish government on Friday will increase the deficit by 24 billion Polish zlotys or 5.37 billion euro. The finance minister announced the 2023 budget deficit was originally planned at 68 billion Polish zlotys or 15.2 billion euro, with spending at 672.5 billion Polish zlotys. A Friday press conference. She went on to explain that expenditures has risen by 20.8 billion Polish zlotys. Rzeczkowska also said that GDP growth may be a little over 1% in 2023. We have a chance of achieving 1% and even a little over 1% GDP growth, she said. The original budget saw GDP growth at 1.7%. Rzeczkowska explained that the amendment is based on conservative forecast by financial institutions. In a spring update to the Convergence program, the EU required financial plan, the government assumed GDP growth in 2023 at the level of 0.9%. The budget amendment also assumes average inflation in 2023 to stand at 12%. Rzeczkowska said, adding that consumer price index inflation is expected to return to single figures by year-end, assuming no unforeseen shocks on energy markets or further supply chain disruptions. The annual average inflation assumed on the draft budget amendment is a little higher. We had 9.8%, now we have 12%. This is the annual average gauge, and the end of this year, everything indicates that it will be in single figures, Rzeczkowska said. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said the amendment budget provided for additional 14 billion Polish zlotys for local governments. There is every indication that the Ukrainian counteroffensive has been launched. The authorities in Kiev maintain an information blockade, but the direction of the offensive can be deduced from intelligence information. There is also a lot of evidence to suggest that we will not see offensive as spectacular as the one near Kharkiv last year. At the same time, the Ukrainians are struggling to come to terms with the tragic consequences of the explosion of the dam on the Dnieper. Aleksander Wojak of Telewizja Republika has more. The American Institute for the Study of War reports that the Ukrainian army is on the advance in at least 3 sections of the front. Some successes are reported, including the western part of Donetsk region. Ukrainian officials have announced that their forces have moved from defensive to offensive operations in the area of Bakhmut, and that they are gaining between 200 meters and almost 2 kilometers on the outskirts of the town. President Zelensky has yet to officially confirm reports that a counteroffensive has been launched, despite US media reports for several days now that the Russians have been pushed out of occupied Ukrainian territory. In the Donetsk region, very heavy fighting, but I'm grateful to everyone who has contributed, because you can see the results. Bakhmut, well done. We keep going. We take it one step at a time. After President Zelensky visited the flooded areas of Kherson region yesterday, the Russians shelled an evacuation point. Civilians forced to leave their homes have gathered there. The situation is being monitored by the United Nations. United States President Joe Biden says that he believes the United States will have the necessary funding to support Ukraine for as long as it takes, as Russia continues its invasion.
Today, we'll also discuss our unwavering support for the people of Ukraine and who are defending themselves against the most brutal aggression we've seen in a long time at the hands of Russia and Putin. The UK and the United States, together with more than 50 partners, have committed historic levels of security assistance to Ukraine. And I want to thank the Prime Minister for his strong leadership, contributing significant amounts of security assistance and training Ukrainian troops so they can effectively use the equipment and ammunition we've collectively provided. In talks with the Ukrainians and particularly with Zelensky and our allies and partners on commitments to Ukraine, long-term security to deter future aggression after this war ends is a goal. And we're advancing this goal by providing them the support Ukraine needs now on the battlefield and helping them strengthen their military over the long term. The fact of the matter is that I believe we'll have the funding necessary to support Ukraine as long as it takes.
The UK is proud of our contribution, including providing tanks, long-range weapons, and training Ukrainian soldiers. But let no one doubt, US leadership and resources are the decisive contribution allowing the forces of democracy and freedom to prevail.
What's your preferred model for a long-term security agreement with respect to Ukraine?
We're lucky to have America's investment in European security, but we need to share the burden alongside you, which is why defence spending in the UK has been above the 2% NATO benchmark. It's on an increasing trajectory, and we would encourage other countries to follow the lead that the US and the UK set, because our security is collective.
Is it time for a British NATO Secretary General?
Maybe. That remains to be seen. We're going to have to get a consensus within NATO to see that happen. They have a candidate who's a very qualified individual, but we're going to have we have a lot of discussion, not between us, but in NATO, to determine what the outcome of that will be.
Biden also said it remains to be seen whether it's time for a British Secretary General of NATO, adding that the organization allies need to discuss candidates for the leadership role. Sunak had been expected to try to win Biden's backing for Defense Minister Ben Wallace's bid to become the next NATO chief. That's it for now. We'll be back tomorrow, same time.